Yo, what's poppin'? We're here with the Kickoff Clash NA Day 1 review. I'm gonna try and go a little quick, but yeah. So first off, the 8 seed Washington Justice, who are 3-3 with a +0 map differential, against the first seed San Francisco Shock 6-0 with a +13 map differential, ends up being a 3-2 reverse sweep for the Shock. Maybe not what they were expecting when they picked Washington. But starting off in Ilios, 2-1 victory for Washington, fielding Happy, Assassin, Mag, Opener, and Krillin. You'll notice no decay. Shock playing Kilo proper, Kaluge, Finn, Violet. No surprise there. Ruins is a 100-99 victory for Washington, playing Reaper, Tracer, Doom, Lucio, Moira, and Shock playing Soldier, Widow, Winston, Ana, Lucio. So yeah, no decay. Kaluge ends up swapping over the Doom eventually, and Happy's doing a lot of work. And yeah, they end up basically mirroring the comp. And yeah, Washington win the round. Happy's playing great. And Violet ends up missing a big beat on Kilo, so watching out for Violet maybe hitting his beats. But yeah, Washington at the beginning, I thought they were struggling to like close the distance against Shock on the new Moira, but ended up not being a problem as Happy went kind of crazy. Yeah, so moving on to Lighthouse, 154 victory for the Shock. Washington playing Soldier, Tracer, Winston, Lucio, Ana. Shock playing the same thing except for Echo over Tracer. Shock looked pretty dominant this fight. I thought they would kind of come back into the series here. The proper Echo was huge. It was diffing Assassin a lot. Washington only won one fight, but yeah, this scoreline or this percentage wise, Shock was a lot more dominant than it might insinuate. And now moving on to Well, which is 100-99 victory for Washington. Both teams playing Soldier, Tracer, Winston, Lucio, Ana. Proper is diffing Assassin. Yeah. Mag is jumping onto the Shock backline and finding big value, and Happy's playing really good. Washington are playing pretty aggressively on the like whenever they have control of the point. So Mag basically, yeah, he's exposing the very active Shock backline. And Happy actually had a deadlift with 19 out of 36 final blows. And they're really hunting for the Shock backline if they're playing too aggressively or they're trying to be too active in the fight. Shock ended up looking a little confused and unable to adapt to what Washington was doing, especially on the Doom Lucio Moira. You don't see a lot of teams playing that, and it didn't look like they really knew how to respond to it, especially maybe with the Reaper Tracer. So maybe kind of showing them they don't know how to adapt to what's in front of them. Moving on to Eichenwald, 3-2 victory for Washington. Decay comes in for Assassin, Sam comes in for Kilo. Shock's offense, we have Washington playing Soldier, Tracer, Winston, Lucio, Ana. Pretty much what we expect from them. Shock playing the Reaper, Genji, Winston, Moira, Lucio. No Soldier, no Tracer, so a little interesting. So let me so yeah, we have more of the same for Washington's offense as well, right? With the Soldier, Tracer, both teams mirroring. So Washington really looked peak right here. This is probably their best look of the season, I would say. And Shocker is struggling to execute clean dives on the Washington backline. They're not really dying fast enough, and this results in them not peeling fast enough for their own backline. But yeah, so Shock their dives aren't really finding as much value as Washington's are. Proper is looking really good, right? But he's mostly trying to keep Decay in check, so he's kind of following him around and stopping Decay from doing things. So it kind of cancels out their value. And Happy is just doing way more than Sam on the legs. Not sure why you bring in Sam here. Maybe because they want to play, I don't know, Reaper. I'm not sure why you bring in Sam. He's on Soldier. Probably just stick with Kilo. Krillin's hitting massive nades every fight on key targets, whether it be Shock trying to find a dive or setting up dives for Washington. And Washington really making Shock regret picking them. They're up 2-0 at this point. They can close out the series. Moving over to Dorado, which is a 3-0 victory for Washington. Kilo comes in for Sam. Shock starts the offense. Washington playing Widow, Tracer, Winston, Brig, Ana. Shock playing Widow, Genji, Winston, Ana, Brig. So the only difference being the Tracer and the Genji. Nothing really happened for the first like minute or so. Just free push for Shock to choke. Kind of the Widow, the nature of Widowmakers, they kind of slowly game down, right? But eventually, they make it through with like 345 off of support ults and a primal. Mag's playing pretty well, going deep with primal, is getting big kills, making big space. Oftentimes in this series, Mag would get slept and then woken up, and that kind of hurt Shock a bit. Kilo swaps over to Ash on the second point, and eventually Shock just kind of make it through B and then into C, and Kilo on Ash kind of opens up the map in my opinion, and Shock end up capping this map with 40 seconds left. So maybe like after a kind of shaky start on first, they kind of and a little bit of a struggle trying to get through second, they get it done with pretty much no resistance after that, which is a little scary because you might think, because to me it was looking like Washington was starting to slide back into how passive they are and kind of letting the fight come to them, and that's not where we've seen them look good. We've seen them look good whenever they're taking the tempo, setting the aggression, right? Um, Happy was pretty quiet just after Kilo swapped over to Ash, which is very like that's not what you want. It's kind of been the main centerpiece of this team, and the Krillin were also not as big. He still hits them, of course, but not as frequent. Shock on their defense, they end up full holding Washington on first point. Kilo playing really well on the Widow this time. Proper deflects Happy, hit headshots into him twice this round. Yeah, Kalush is playing well. Everyone on Shock is playing well, and they're making pop off plays. Other than like Violet, I didn't really see that much from him. But they seem to have a pretty good understanding on how to make everyone like set up well and set everyone up for success. And Washington essentially let Shock back into the series, and Shock are fully able to reverse sweep this, and they end up doing it, right? So maybe if you're Washington, you kind of had to win it in three, or you were going to lose, is what it kind of felt like. Moving on to New Queen Street, ends up being a 90-48 victory for Shock. No swaps here. Happy ends up with a high ground control. Both teams are playing Soldier Tracer, Winston Luciana, by the way. Happy ends up with high ground control at the start. Finn nades him. Finn shoots nades. And just a lot of good stuff from Finn this map. But the main thing of this map was Proper. Proper was pretty much unlocked. His playstyle shifted from checking Decay and making sure Decay couldn't do things to trying to do more than him, trying to out play make him. And it was working, right? This kind of I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it other than just like unlocked his playstyle. It wasn't like he wasn't doing things. He was stopping Decay from doing things. But now that he stopped trying to stop that, uh, he's just doing more than Decay. The Shock backline's also being more active, and Washington's not really jumping on them as much. And Shock are just not letting Washington get comfortable. They're playing fast, and they're setting the tempo once again. Moving on to Lijiang. It's a 2-1 win for Shock. Assassin comes in for Decay, and Sam comes in for Kilo. So Assassin looking to be maybe a control player. I don't know why they prefer Assassin to Decay on this map type, but it worked the first time, so maybe again. And then Sam comes in for Kilo, right? Control Center is a 100-99 victory for Washington, and Washington actually roll out with Reaper, Echo, Orisa, Lucia Moira. The first time we see Orisa in this entire Overwatch League season, and it's here, which is very hype. And Shock playing Reaper, Tracer, Winston, Moira, Lucio. So Washington take the white room with Orisa, right? But as soon as they try to walk out onto the point, take the fight, they just have Shock just have angles on them, and the Orisa falls. So, and then they swap off of it. And Krusty types, "What was that?" in the chat, right? But the Orisa took the space well, but trying to move out is just I don't know what the goal was really. I don't know why you whip it out here, but I'm happy they did. So back and forth, Assassin's doing good things. Sam's doing all right, right? Eventually, Washington's at the point in OT, and Shock kill Krillin, I believe. And instead of pushing their advantage, they kind of sit around. I'm not sure what the goal was there, but I feel like they should have done it. Yeah, it was from Proper sticking him and Cole. No, it wasn't actually, because he just Proper sticked Krillin when he was in Cole, but it ended just in time and he faded out of it. But I believe they still capitalized on the kill. But then I don't know, Shock just not doing a lot, even they had an advantage, and it probably cost them the round. Washington take the first map. We run to Night Market, which is 199 for Shock. Washington playing Reaper, Echo, Doom, Lucio, Moira. Shock playing Reaper, Tracer, Winston, Moira, Lucio. So the Moira coming out now instead of the Ana. Happened last map too. It was pretty back and forth, but in the end, final fight is where it really matters, right? Well, before Proper sticked Krillin in Cole, which was really cool. But final fight, it comes down. Shock or Washington's in control of the point, and Chalk basically only have a proper pulse bomb to try and capitalize this fight. So Mag ends up getting 2. The proper sticks Mag as he comes down from the meteor strike, and that opens up the match because he ends up dying from that, right? And Kaluz punches Krillin out of coal, and Chalk end up turning the fight and win. It looked pretty lost. So Chalk being very clutch when they need to be, as all champions have to be, and they come out on top 199. Moving on to Gardens, which is 155 for Shock. Shock take the early point control. Tim goes in a little early, proper 6 mag, opener beats, Happy Blossoms, Washington committing ults, no losing fights multiple times. But in the end, Shock clutch up, right, and they complete the reverse sweep. And Washington end up folding in a high pressure situation, committing ults into lost fights happened on Night Market. And you could argue they should have been set up for victory here. There was a possibility that Washington wins this match. So overall, Washington was setting tempo, and they were playing to their potential, but I think they let their foot off the gas a little bit. Started playing more passively, and that's not when they look good. They need to set the tempo and control the match. And them taking their foot off the gas a little bit ends up letting Shock back into the match, and you do not want to let the San Francisco Shock back into the match. Shock may be shaking off nerves at the first time on the stage, but they also definitely switched up the playstyle of how they played. Maybe their backline was stopped playing as aggressively, so it was harder for them to go proper. Instead of checking decay, tries to roll to just his backline. Overall, Chalk played better as the match went on, and their backline became much more difficult to dive, and resulted in them living longer, which made more value and helped Chalk. Anyway, some of the player of the match was the proper, finding huge value in every fight, sticking coals, coming up huge, especially in that high pressure situation where they have to win the fight basically with his pulse bomb, and he finds a way to do it. Huge stuff from proper, big showing on a big stage. Right? Moving over to the second match, the Atlanta Reign, who is 7th seed, 3-3+1, against the 4th seed Florida Mayhem, the 4-2+7, ends up being a 3-1 victory for Atlanta. I call this as being the closest match in the round 1 for NA. Ended up not quite being that. I would argue the Washington was closer. Actually, this might have been not the least closest match. Well, no, maybe not. But it was not even the second closest match, I would argue. Maybe that's fake. Anyway, not important. So, sitting on Ilios is a 2-1 victory for Florida. It's their only map win. Atlanta playing Kai, Venom, Gator, Ultraviolet, and OG. Florida playing Checkmate, Hydron, Someone, Animo, and Surma Jed. Well is a 123 victory for Atlanta, playing Soldier, Tracer, Winston, Ana, Lucio. And Florida's playing the same thing back. Gator, in these fights, he is diving very hard on Surma Jed, often. But he trades for him sometimes, but sometimes he doesn't. And Gator's kind of overcommitting, I would say, his jumps. But eventually, the main reason that I'd like to win this map, even though I think at Gator maybe he's going a little too deep, maybe trying to kill Surma Jed a little too much, Venom basically clutches out this map. He is playing lights out, and he basically is the only reason that they win this map. Maybe Gator playing super aggro helped him. Maybe he had the space needed then to pop off, but whatever the reason, it doesn't work in the next 2 maps. As Florida wins the next one 100-0. Basically, Surma Jed's getting dove still, but he's living, he's winning. Checkmate is focusing down Gator very hard. Gator's had a lot of pressure put on him this entire map, and Florida are dominating this round, and Atlanta just cannot find any ground at all. And Gator doesn't even get primal at the end. So 100-0, no primal for Gator. So he's really struggling in these first 2 maps. Moving over to the Lighthouse, it's 127 to Florida. It's the same story, really, a little closer. OG gets Ajaxed at one point. Someone goes down 1% before Primal. That's basically how Atlanta take their 27%. But yeah, mostly the same thing. Other than Venom hard carrying that round 1, it was Mayhem all day. OG was really struggling on the last map. There were times where he would die, come back into the fight, die again. Unlucky. Venom kind of went quiet after that first map, right? And Surma Jed was just playing aggressive, borderline feeding, right? He's limit tested. He's tested those limits, and he plays to them. And Getter is feeding pretty bad, and basically he's inting on Surma Jed, but you cannot int on the inter. The tactical inter cannot be inted on. It doesn't work. But then King's Row comes out, 4-3 win Atlanta. Nero comes in for Venom. Hawk comes in for Gator. Atlanta's offense is Atlanta playing Soldier, Tracer, Winston on the Lucio. Florida playing Echo instead of the Tracer. And someone goes really hard. Um, yeah. Someone goes hard on the first point, rather. But Hawk swaps over the Zarya, and Nero swaps over the Reaper. And from there on out, it's just Atlanta clear sailing. They kind of roll Florida. They end up capping with 224. That's a very good time for Kings Row, especially after having a pretty poor first point. Kind of, well, not pretty poor. It took them like maybe over half the time. Moving over to Florida's offense, Atlanta's playing Soldier, Genji, Doom on a Lucio on their defense, and Florida playing the Tracer, Soldier, Winston, Lucio on it. Hawk immediately dies on Doomfist, and Florida cap the first point. Enter B with 520, and then he swaps over to the Zarya. Nero goes over to the Reaper. Checkmate goes over to the Echo. And Atlanta's like holding the choke, but Florida just kind of walked through it and Nanovisor and win that point, which I thought was really weird. Not the point, but that fight. Kai gets his visors and Florida just leaves and comes back, and it's someone primals them, and they basically get through second. And the last fight on that second point is very. The last fight on third, I'm moving over to that now, is very extended. It doesn't quite work. Checkmate swaps over to May. Someone goes over to Rhine. And Florida have about 2 fights left when I swap over to Rhine. And they get impatient. They flank all the way over to the hallway, like the high ground hallway on King's Row. But they get like impatient and they nanovisor, and as Hydron like goes deep with the visor, Hawk just walks into the Florida backline and kills them. And Florida end up not being able to complete third. But I feel like they kind of had some good positioning, but they needed to coordinate their nanovisor more with their Reinhardt rush going somewhere. Maybe you had to set up Hydron maybe on a flank as the rest of your team sped onto Hawk maybe, or onto the backline if you could get them. But I don't think you could. I think you had to speed onto Hawk while the visor was doing work. And the visor went deep, but it was kind of uncoordinated, and he kind of just walked through main, and it just didn't get the value maybe could have. They took the time to set it up. And then Atlanta has 224 to get a tick, and then someone dies, and it just happens, right? So, but overall for this map, UV had some pretty insane sleeps. Really thought this was the best map, probably. I liked Florida going to the rush comp at that last fight, but I think they just played too impatient. They jumped the gun, and they needed some more coordination. And Atlanta's looking very good on the Zarya comp. Really much better than the Winston, much better than the Doom, in my opinion. And I hope that they continue to play it. Moving over to Watchpoint Gibraltar, a 3-2 victory for Atlanta, and it doesn't really matter what happens here. All I need to say is this was a Kai show. Kai was doing the most on Whatever. At the start of this map, I was like, I think this season's been kind of mid to Kai for the people I was talking to, right? But he turned up and he just popped off, and I was like, oh, okay, man, my bad. Never speak bad about Kai again. So he was just an absolute beast. He basically put Atlanta on his back. Not like they were playing bad. Gator was in, Hawk, Venom was in for Nero, right? It's Watchpoint Gibraltar. Of course they are. But Florida wasn't even taking the duels. Hydron swapped off a Widow. He just didn't have confidence to win them or something. Florida was resorting to Genji Tracer dies, but it's just not viable in the long run. No real pressure on Kai on this map. Overall, like he any pressure he had, he would just ignore, right? Or he would just like neutralize the target. Very good stuff from Kai. I don't even need to. Anything else in this map is just takes a back seat. I don't even need to talk about it really. And that's 3-2 victory for New Queen Street and Atlanta. That does make sense. This map is actually very close to New Queen Street. It was tied at the very end. They both reached the checkpoint, but did not push it a 0.01 meter further. A millimeter? It's a millimeter, right? They didn't push it a millimeter forward. Maybe it's a centimeter. I think it's a centimeter. Okay, so they didn't push it a centimeter more. And Florida had the early lead, and they held it for a pretty long time. But Atlanta came back, and then had neck and neck. And the alt rotation of the Zarya comp from Atlanta into the Winston comp. This is wrong on the screen if you're looking. This was Zarya, but the alt rotation from the Zarya comp of Atlanta just kind of played into their favor in the overtime. Because in the overtime, when both teams are tied, right? It's just whoever makes it past first. That could have went on forever. But yeah, the wick burns for both of them. So in order for a draw, whenever they're neck and neck, both teams would have to C9. So it's just whoever C9's last, basically. I think. Um, maybe no, they still had to push it, but yeah, the alt rotation kind of worked in their favor. The Winston comp doesn't have the same alt punch as the Zarya comp, and it ended up being a Zarya comp victory and Atlanta victory. So overall for this match, Atlanta looked pretty shaky on their first map. The only reason they stole around was Venom popping off. But then when Atlanta brings him to King's Row, and Splitter really struggles to shut down the Zarya comp, um, it kind of worked out for them and kind of swings momentum into their favor. Atlanta is, to me, seems like a very ego team, very if their spirits are high, so is their gameplay kind of thing, if that makes sense. And it kind of worked out. UV also played a very strong map. I need to mention that. And then Kai just dismantles him on Jib, which is the reason he's the player of the match. And the new Queen Street was pretty close, but I really do think it was a compositional advantage for Atlanta. So yeah, it has to be Kai. Completely changed the outcome of this game. It was Florida's map pick, right? Because loser's pick, and Florida said, "Oh, we're going to bring him to Watchpoint Gibraltar." Their Winston comp was bad. We just rolled it, and Kai says, "No, I'm not going to do that. It's going to be you're going to get literally rolled." And he pretty much shook them their core, not even taking the duel. So big props to Kai for that one. Moving on to the third match of the day, we have the fifth seeded Houston Outlaws, who are 4-2 with a +5 map differential, against the third seed LA Gladiators, 4-2 with a +7 differential. Ends up being a 3-0 for Gladiators, I believe. I don't think Houston got a map. Hold on, I will quickly check on the schedule. Say I don't think I got it. No, 3-0. So Lijiang Towers a 2-0 for Gladiators. Houston playing Merit, Pelican, Dante, Lastro, Iris. Gladiators playing Kevster, Patafan, Reiner, Chu, and Funny Astro. So that market is 190 for Gladiators. Houston playing Reaper, Tracer, Doom, Lucio, Moira. Gladiators playing Tracer, Soldier, Doom, on Lucio. So I forget what I just said because I paused the video, but whatever. I think I said it comps. So first map, Merit does a lot. Kevster at one point there was a 1v5 which had to stick a Moira. It was very weird. But Merit did a lot, and Patafan visors were getting big value. So Patafan had taken a lot of flack for his Soldier. It has not been probably been one of the weaker Soldier players in NA. But this series, he looked pretty good. And I don't know if it was because there was no enemy hit scan, so he wasn't really taking any duels. He was just playing Soldier into like the Doom often, but he looked good. Not great, but he looked good. Moving on to Control Center after Gladiator Sig Map 1, they look just a little bit better than Houston on this particular map, this particular round. They just look a little more cohesive, and they look a little stronger, even though both teams are on the Doom. Moving on to Control Center, it's 100-65 for the Gladiators. Houston still running Reaper, Echo, Doom, Lucio, Moira, and Gladiators running Cassidy, May, Ryan, Bap, Lucio, showing that it wasn't just a mind trick against the rain. It was real. And the Gladiators are looking like Spitfire and steroids. Shu had 70% all after the first fight, and everyone else had 30 basically. Potterfarm was hitting big walls. There was one point where Reiner looked like he was going to get staggered, and looked like they were just kind of leaving him. But then he charges back, and his team pulls up, and the Gladiators like flip the point, and it almost results in Gladiators winning. But then Merit hits a double kill on a pulse spawn. Pelican goes crazy, so it doesn't end up. But the big story of this Control Center was Shu on Baptiste. It's just an absolute pleasure watching him play Bap. Iris hit a fat like 3-man nade, but Lamp said no shot. And then he killed 2, and then Dante tried to fly up to him. He was playing on the tippity top high ground. And Shu kills him, and it was inspirational Bap gameplay. I almost loaded up the game to play it myself. Just unreal. But yeah, Gladiators proving the run comp is real. Shu making Bap look great. And it's a little interesting because Houston kind of dismantled London whenever they played it into them. But maybe either Gladiators are better at it, or it's but the map probably control center. It probably is map based more often than not. But yeah, we went to Eichenwald. It was a 4-3 victory for the Gladiators. It was pretty close. So no swaps. Houston on their offense running Reaper, Tracer, Doom, Lucio, Moira. Gladiators running Tracer, Soldier, Winston, Ana, Lucio. So the story of this Houston offense was what was it? So basically, what happened here? Reiner is on starts on a Winston, but he dies first really early in this first fight, and he swaps over to Doom. Gladiators DPS kind of bail him out. The Houston still get like half the point. Um, After they kept the point, right? They kind of struggle a bit on the second point, Houston, to get through, but they end up closing out with Cole. They enter the third point with 130, and they just kind of roll through in the cap of 20 seconds. So it takes them only a minute and 10 seconds to get through third. And she's not really finding the big nades I'm finding. And because of that, the Moira kind of outvalues the Ana if you're not hitting the big nades. And Houston kind of went off of that. I think the Moira is getting more value than the Ana in most of these fights, including the Cole fights. Cole was a big difference maker here. Um, in the Gladiators offense, they kind of roll through A. Houston can test B before the gate opens, but then they lose. But that's normal. They drain the clock out. And now HOU swaps over to the Moira himself. And then Gladiators make it to C with 4 minutes. And then the cap with 332. So kind of just a roll, right? 332 is a pretty solid cap. Very good, really. Not even very solid. And Dante's just kind of dying really early in a lot of these fights. And I don't know. The Gladiators just kind of went through. She was swapping over to the Moira. A little surprising because Ana, of course, one of the huge playmakers in this meta. But they go to Moira and it ends up working out. Houston offense has a minute. Potiphon has a really good defense here. Does huge damage on the first fight. Second fight, he gets a visor. Insane stuff. And Houston ended up getting 36.8, so technically winnable, but they have to hold for 4 minutes and 12 seconds. And if Houston immediately die, basically, they try to have an early fight at the bridge, and it does not work. But yeah, so overall, first Gladiators defense, she was not finding the big nades. Potiphar was kind of struggling. And the Gladiators overall were not setting the tempo or controlling the play that much. Yeah, they had an alright first. Yeah, they had a pretty good second, but on third point they just got slaughtered. But on the offense, they set the tempo again. Dante was dying super early. Potiphar was doing work, and they looked a lot better than Houston did on the Doomfist, which is kind of weird because Houston's supposed to be the Doomfist guys, but they're also not playing Soldier at all. I don't know why they don't want Merit on Soldier. I thought he's been a pretty good Soldier in this season, but the Reaper, I don't know. They're high on the Reaper Doom with the Moira. Kind of playing like a 6-man. So maybe they say, oh, well, Soldier's too weak or something, too easy to dive, maybe. Maybe they value the more upfront damage. I don't know the whole reasoning, but I think Soldier probably be good in this particular matchup because you really want to challenge Patafan to get the value to take duels, especially because he's like a little weak. Moving over to Circuit Royale. This was a pretty big wash for Houston. Gladiators just kind of win. Piggy comes in for Dante, Ons comes in for Patafon, and Space comes in for Ranner, so you expect that. Gladiators actually hold that first original corner quite long. They're playing Hanzo, Widow, Sigma, Bap, Zen on the defense. Houston playing Widow, Tracer, Sigma, Zen, Bap. So mostly the same thing. The only difference is the Tracer, which I don't know why teams are so high on Tracer on this map, to be honest. I feel like she doesn't have any space to work with, and into 2 snipers especially, it's not ideal, but a lot of teams are playing it, so clearly it has some value. But yeah, lag hold on that back corner. Not even like closer to the checkpoint as a lot of teams get, right on the corner, and it's just standard Circuit Royale. I don't even think Houston got a kill, to be honest. Maybe they did. I don't really know, but it didn't seem like they did to me. Going over the Gladiators offense, which is much more exciting. Houston playing Sim, May, Ryan, Lucio, Bap. Gladiators playing Echo, Widow, Sigma, Bap, Zen. The Houston actually hold on that first corner for a bit, and they just TP onto whoever tries to walk up that like right side. If you're Houston, they TP on the skewed one time. I remember they TP onto Ons when he goes on a flank. Eventually, Space gets 2, and that corner doesn't really work. And then they're just playing for that back bend. Uh, Eventually, um, there's a TP blizzard into the backline, which I guess I should mention. That was pretty good. But there's a big fight at the end. Houston get a sim wall and Space Lake fluxes through it, so I don't think much damage came on except Kevstar and the Echo. And somehow Iris died through the beat in the lamp, and I don't know how it happened, but he went down in the flex, and Houston ended up winning that fight. So I don't know if he didn't get the beat or something happened, but he took a ton of damage in the sky, and Houston just kind of lost off it. I really thought Houston were looking good in that fight. I thought it was winnable, but as soon as Iris goes down, it's just not possible. So overall, guys just look better than Houston on every composition, even the Doom comp. And Spotify was looking good. Didn't give him player of the match just because I gave it to Shu because the stuff he was doing on BAP was just insane. And his Ana was good. And after that performance on BAP, it's just, I don't know. Maybe I'm sipping too much for BAP gameplay, but I'm not even like a BAP enjoyer. It just looked like it was reminiscent of the Countdown Cup window. Uh, and that's just an inspirational fight. So but yeah, Gladiators did show some weakness on Iconwell defense, particularly where they failed to control the tempo, but nothing too concerning. Houston looked as advertised, I would say, and I kind of like the creative Ryan Strat. Definitely had potential, and they looked all right. So not bad for them. Moving on to the last map of the series, the 6th seed Toronto Defiant 4-2 at +3 against the 2nd seed Dallas Fuel, who are 5-1 at +10. Ends up being a sweep for Dallas, but it was a close sweep, I would say, at time. It was a close first map. That's it. So Lijiang Tower ends up being a 2-1 victory for Dallas, and I'm a Toronto fan, so I didn't write down anything because I was just watching the gameplay. But Toronto playing playing Hisu, Aldo, Hoppa, Chorong, and Twilight. Dallas playing Edison, Sparkle, Hanbin, Fielder, and Chio. I don't have anything here, but basically it was a very close match. It was extremely high. There were clutch plays from Hisu on round 1 in overtime to get a 3K with a Blossom to turn the fight that looked completely unwinnable. And it brought Toronto victory. It was super hype. And then extremely back and forth. Dallas ends up being on the May front control center, and Toronto just run their standard stuff. And it looked very close both ways. I really thought Toronto could have won that fight, but just not quite. I think Dallas are a little bit better in their alt management and their fight planning and their alt tracking, and like they're just a little bit better. They edged them out in that map. And in the night market, it was like 100-0 almost, and then Hoppa hops through the window and then he hops back and he's like living. And Toronto turned that fight somehow, and it was just bonkers. They had no business coming back into that map, and they almost clutched it out, but Dallas are that much better, and it was probably the best Zarya comp mirror we've seen in that for sure. Maybe in that one map, maybe the best Zarya mirror we've seen in the entire season. However, as my hopium was arising for Defiant, it all comes crashing down, just gone. No substitutions on Midtown, but it ends up being a pretty dominant 3-2 victory for Dallas, I believe. Dallas ended up capping with like 220 something, maybe 230. Chorong like died early somehow, and as soon as I saw Chorong like, randomly die in the first fight, I was like, oh, my hopium's gone. It's just gone. Like, how does your Lucio die there? I still don't know how he died there. They entered B with 510. Sparkle's Helix jumping into the team like with Nano Visor. Hoppa's grabbing him. He doesn't care. He's still killing people. Toronto win like one fight maybe, but that was it. And I'm gone. My hopes and dreams for the Toronto Defiant. Moving on to their offense, they're just collapsing. It started to look like the last 3-0 where Toronto just had no fight back. But Hisu ended up killing a lot on the Reaper. They cap and they enter B, but it's not enough. He does the Ajax Chio one time. They like walk around into Dallas's old spawn and they find a grab and Chio Ajax and they win a fight on second, but that's it. That's all they get. And at this point, I'm like, oh, it's just a wrap. Moving on to Dorado, it was a 2-1 win for Dallas. They didn't complete the map. This was very winnable, but yeah, Finale came in for Hisu, so no Hisu now. Finale although. Muse came in for Hoppa, Guerrero came in for Edison, and Fearless came in for Hanbin. Dallas has the first offense. Toronto playing Tracer, Genji, Winston, Brig, Ana, and Dallas playing Ashe, Tracer, Winston, Ana, Brig. So no Widow, instead playing Ashe, um, which is a bit of a question mark. Not a question mark because Ashe is of course like an all right pick, especially with no hit scan against. But I feel like the Widow is just that much better. Like the sight lines just better for Widow here. I feel like Ashe can get into the ideal range maybe. So for this offense, Dallas get the cut through the choke, basically for free. But as that happens, trying to kind of collapse on Guerrero, and then they just move over to the rest of Dallas. And Muse and Finale's looking pretty immaculate this map. I thought the Tracer gameplay was really good, and I really do think that Toronto's best look is this monkey comp, and I kind of wish they would lean into it a little more when they can. Like, can you play the Winston comp instead of the Zarya comp on Midtown? Probably. Maybe you opt for that. I don't know. But at the same time, they did just play very close in control center, so it's very understandable. So whatever. But I do wish they would maybe lean into it more often. But yeah, Dallas do make it to B, and I thought there was maybe a bit of a C9 from Toronto there. I kind of thought they'd win that fight. But then Toronto just hold at that very beginning of B, and they're not really giving Dallas any room to breathe. Toronto eventually forced to kite back, and the payload goes like under the bridge a little bit, but Finale was just putting on a show almost. It was really good Tracer gameplay, and Dallas was kind of stuck. They couldn't get through, and Toronto do a pretty solid hold of halfway through second, and it was very winnable. Toronto's offense, they play the Tracer Genji again. They play the Winston Brig Ana. Dallas plays the Widow Tracer, Winston Ana Brig, and Agrio dies, right? And then although it's sitting like up on that back choke between B and A, basically, and he grapples up and point blank headshots although, and then he hits a Twitter clip and he kills like everyone, and now Guerrero is feeling it. Although gets his first blade 3 minutes and 30 seconds in, he won't use it till overtime. And Finale it opens up because Finale finds a pick on Guerrero, essentially, is the main reason here. Uh, but it was pretty sad from all though. This was not a good offense for him. He builds 2 blades total. He only uses one of them, and both points go to overtime. And I don't know. Finale basically had to do everything on this offense to even get through point A. I think because if Finale doesn't kill Guerrero, I don't think the blade gets anything. Uh, so not great, not great from Toronto on this offense. Finale played great. Muse played all right, although not great. But overall, this match, Mine came out swinging. Looked like they'd actually hold a candle to the fuel. Actually looked like maybe the fourth best team in NA. Like I have them ranked, just because the middle of NA is so messed up, right? But the following map they returned to status quo defiant. It's very sad, but it was much better than their last 3-0 meeting. There was at least fights. I'm not sure if it was nerves or anything for the Dallas on that first map. I thought they looked good. I can't really say anything bad about them. So I don't. It could have been nerves, but it could have just been Toronto Defiant actually playing up to their maybe potential. I don't know. Anyway, Thomason player of the match going to Chio. I didn't mention him that much, but he was playing just bonkers. He was getting kills. His beats were good. There was one Ajax. I mentioned him once because he Ajax, but that's just how it is when you're a main support. It's hard to pick out the good plays. It's just so consistent. There were crazy boops on Muse on this map on break. He was hitting big whip shots. And he was just there. He was exactly how you wanted. He was like peak main support gameplay. Very impressive stuff. Anyway, hopefully that was a decent speed run. I average about 10 minutes per match, which is not bad. So yeah. If you give it a like, give it a subscribe. for sure. Share. Everyone was wondering what happened on this first day. I couldn't watch it. Send me the video. I have all the matches timestamped, so all that. Watch out for the APAC review tomorrow, and have a good one.